This is Anarchast.
Buenos dias. Welcome to another edition of Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. We're here in just above Acapulco Beach in Mexico, and we have a person, Alexander Jousse, who's originally from South Africa. He now lives in Italy, and he came for a month-long little vacation to Acapulco, and we're just hanging out. He's an anarchist, and so obviously the very first question we always ask everybody is, how did you become an anarchist?
I think part of it was I first grew up in the UK, and my father was a small-time politician. He was a member of the Tory party and knew Thatcher. Then just before she came in power, he just got pissed off with politics and hypocrisy. He left the UK and moved back to South Africa, where he started working for himself, running a few companies. Then after that, it's just living in South Africa. On one hand, my father was a businessman, always talking about business, complaining about taxes, government intervention and that, so it's hard not to. And then living in South Africa during the 80s and 90s with military conscription and terrorism and the war going up in Zimbabwe and Mozambique and Angola. So after a while you just think, I don't want to kill people because some fat old white guy in a hat says I must. Gee. So that was the start. And then, you start growing up, and then someone says, well, everyone's poor and socialism is better, so you go through this sort of stage of looking at socialism, and then you live in a socialist country. And then you say, this is bad.
Are you talking about Italy?
This was the UK. I lived in the late 90s for a while and saw some of the worst sides of the UK. Then around year 2000, just after there, I was reading some blogs. It was probably when I was into Unix and Linux, and there was this blog by ESR about guns and libertarianism and Wicker or whatever. And he had a few links to Lou Rockwell. So start reading Lou Rockwell, listening to some stuff, then you get introduced to Stefan Molyneux. And then you think, see, libertarianism, it's interesting, it's nice, it seems honest, it will work. And then you follow it logically then. You say, well, government's bad, so the United States started off as a small government, and look where it is now. So it's not very logical, libertarianism in that point of view. If you take the philosophy to its logical conclusion, no, government's better.
Yeah, and there's actually a meme on Facebook I saw recently, and it was a heart surgeon, or some sort of surgeon, and he's doing a surgery, and he says, okay, I've got 80% of the tumor removed. That should be good. and that's really how people, minarchists are, libertarians who aren't anarchists. Yeah. They've come most of the way, but why stop there?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like, if all government's evil, why have just a small one? Why have it at all? And I think a lot of people are just scared of what would happen because we've all lived in statism for so long. And everyone's so used to it, and all of the economy and everything is all adjusted to it. Yeah. If that stops all of a sudden, there will be a period of chaotic times for sure. Yeah. But that's actually just caused by, again, the state. Otherwise, we'd already be in a natural free market sort of a thing. And I also think that with so many things have advanced in the last few hundred years, all the technology and everything, and people are really realizing that you don't have to have wars, and it's actually, there's no point to it anymore. There used to be a bit of a point because these countries would have gold and stuff, and that's actually what's going on in Syria and all that right now, is they want the oil. But the problem is the U.S. government. It's not that there's oil there. The Chinese are just buying it. They're not stealing it.
Yeah, that's the different philosophy. The government, it's theft. You invade a country, you steal their gold, steal their people.
Yeah.
eat their food.
And then people say, well, we need government because otherwise people would come and take our stuff. It's like, well, people don't just generally do that. I wouldn't go to Syria right now and start shooting some people and grab, their can of oil or anything. It'd be...
Yeah, you catch a flight back home and say...
Yeah. A lot of risk. I'd probably going to get killed. And it just doesn't make any sense. But, of course, under statism, a lot of things that don't make any sense all of a sudden are normal.
Yeah.
So your dad was sort of sounds like a conservative.
Yeah.
And is he still?
It's probably more like an old-fashioned conservative. He still thinks you need small government for roads and defense and courts and that.
Right.
But I haven't talked too much to him about it since then. I've mainly started my writing, and that's after I last saw my father. So I send him some emails, and he mentions a few things, but we actually need to meet again and talk.
Yeah, there's a lot of people just can't let go, and it is very difficult, I understand. They've never seen anything like it before, and we don't know what would happen. That's one of the other things too, we don't know what would happen in a truly free market, but I think it would be much better than what we have today. And even if for people watching who might not be anarchists, even if you're scared of what might happen, at least try to bring it as close to anarchy as possible. So get the small government people, get it as small as possible, and then from there just get it smaller and smaller. Or in other terms, get it bigger and bigger, so create more governments. It's kind of a funny paradox for us anarchists that people say, oh, you don't want government. In fact, we want 7 billion governments. And I think the way that we might get there is by having more and more governments. And we're seeing a lot of the separatist sort of movements all over the place. And you could probably talk to that a little bit, especially in Spain and now in Colorado. And Texas has been talking about it. And that is definitely the better way to go at the moment than what we currently have. It's just because once we have 50 states in the U.S. again, if that was possible, you would never hear about California is going to attack Syria. It just wouldn't make
any financial sense.
But when it's big, it's like, well, now we're big and we have to protect our interests. It's crazy.
I see that as the one route to freedom, particularly in Europe during the Middle Ages and Renaissance. A lot of Italy, it was a mixture of kingdoms, republics, free cities. It was a mix of anything. You pissed off someone in one city and they were trying to kill you. You moved to another city, which a lot of the artists do. Or you move from one big family to the other, work for them. And that was probably the best time in Italy's history before the state got too overwhelming and big. But you still have a few republics. In fact, in Italy, there's still the Republic of San Marino, which still exists as the actual republic. There's Campione d'Italia. It's more of an exclave within Switzerland, a part of Italy and Switzerland. And then there's, of course, Switzerland.
Which is the canton system.
The canton system. And there's actually tax competition between the cantons. And,
well, there is actually in the U.S. as well, between the states. And a lot of people have been moving to Florida lately because they don't have an income tax. And everyone's leaving California. And that's good. We need to have all these things competing. I don't mind if people want to try different things. And, over here we're going to try 20% tax. And, I think it's stupid. I think it should be zero. But go ahead and try, but give us some options, you know? And it's so crazy, this whole mindset, because if you're an American, you can move from California to Florida, no problem. And that changes, and the competition level, there's different things that compete, and they all compete, and that's great. And just like with my other example, if it went back to 50 states, you would never see California's going to get into a war with Nevada. Well, maybe you would, actually. California is such a big place. But that's the problem. Once it gets too big, it becomes unwieldy and things get out of control.
And they're able to externalize their costs onto a greater population. And then it actually becomes, there's more financial incentives to invade people and kill people and so on. But if the people living in your state have to pay for every single war and kidnapping you do, they'll soon get pissed off.
Yeah, the bigger it gets, the more away you are from the state, and the less that you notice all the criminality directly.
Yeah.
So if every city on Earth, for example, was its own sovereign government, you would never see these things, because people would be seeing the mayor driving around town, and all of a sudden he's got like a Mercedes, and everyone would be like, "Why does he have a Mercedes?" Like last week he had a, like a cheap car. And so the further and further it gets away, the more that it can become out of control and really dangerous and criminal.
Yeah.
And so you have lived in South Africa, UK, and Italy, and now you're here in Mexico.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on Mexico?
I like it. It's considerably freer, and really the police and customs people, they just don't really bother you that much.
It is getting worse, though, I have to say. I've been here for quite a while. First time I came to Mexico was probably in the 90s. Even back then, though, there was some issues. Those tourist cards, you lose your tourist card, and now you're in a back office and you got to pay somebody. But it's actually getting worse now. The Mexico City airport, I've seen it get worse. But it actually goes through these waves, because the people in Mexico are quite interesting. They actually still pay attention to this stuff, and if it starts to get a little bit too much, they get rid of it. And so you're starting to see that now with vigilantes, and I just saw another article today. And so a lot of foreigners or Americans might look at an article from Mexico like today, where the headline was, "Vigilantes start beating up police and put the mayor in jail." And a lot of people might think, that's terrible, that's anarchy. No, the people here actually still pay attention to this stuff, and if the cops get out of control, they will actually beat them up or kill them if they're doing that to them. And I have no problem with that. That's self-defense. Not that I'm saying that you should beat up or kill any cop, but if that cop is actually aggressing against you for no reason, especially if he starts beating you up, which is happening all the time in the U.S. now, I have no problem with people fighting back. But of course, in the U.S., it's such an extreme police state now that if you even touch a cop, you'll have SWAT teams and drones, and you'll be in jail forever, if not killed.
That's strange. Also, with these cop killing laws, you have this large difference between who is a brave and who isn't, A police officer can walk into your house, kill your dog, beat up your wife, kill your family, kill you last, and nothing. But you hit him, or you kill him, then it's...
Or even when they go to grab you, if you kind of go like this a little bit, that's assault against a police officer, and now you're in jail for 10 years. It's crazy.
It is crazy.
Yeah, all these governments, it's getting irritating. But, there's a lot of hope, I think. I don't know what you think about that. There's lots of stuff changing. Like you look at Detroit, where the government's bankrupt, and the police have stopped showing up to things now. And there's a lot of private security, and you can call them police, sprouting up out of the free market, and they're doing a phenomenal job. If you haven't seen, there's this one video, and I'll try to link to it on this video, of this police security system in Detroit, private, and how wonderful it is. It's night and day.
Yeah, it is. I've also read about the guy doing the new bus service. Where you just text the guy or send some sort of message, and he drives to the spot where you are, rather than waiting at a shitty bus shelter.
Yeah, there's so many things like that. There's all these new services like Lyft and things like that. These are just apps you have on your phone. Of course, everyone has a phone nowadays. And I've actually used those services, usually with friends, because I don't spend a lot of time in the U.S. But I'll say, let's get a taxi. And they'll go, oh, no problem. They'll hit one thing on their phone. And all of a sudden, this very nice SUV or car rolls up. Very nice driver. He's very friendly. Amazing service. But the government's actually trying to shut it down, because they have all the taxi unions, which are in bed with the government. And it's just that whole fascist monopoly of government. And it's funny, because if you talk to people who say, oh, we need government, one of the things they'll bring up will be, without governments, there'll be monopolies. Well, the government is the biggest monopoly on earth. It's just people haven't thought through these things.
You need a monopoly to break monopolies.
Like the worst monopoly of them all. One that can kill you easily. They all have guns and all that kind of stuff. Because, if McDonald's has a monopoly on fast food, they're not forcing people to buy Big Macs. They're not saying, hey, get in here. That's what the government
going down to Burger King down the road and beating up the staff and shooting them.
No. It's amazing that people haven't caught on faster, but I think more and more, thanks to the internet, I think people are catching on, and they're starting to figure out these things. So that's why I think there is some hope. I don't know what you think about that.
No, I'm fairly optimistic. In the short term for Italy, I'm one hand pessimistic, other hand optimistic. But whenever these government failures, the free market or individuals, if they're allowed to just provide a service, they'll be there. They'll offer the service.
Yep.
They'll find the inefficiencies and work around it, helping people. That's just natural human interaction.
Yep.
How society works without violence.
Yeah, it's interesting too with the recent Edward Snowden and the NSA stuff.
Yeah.
So what basically happened was people realized, and we already knew this for years, I've been talking about this for years, but most people hadn't realized, but the US government is plugged into almost every internet system in the US and tracking every single thing you do. And they're actually tracking people around the world as well. And we're seeing the free market internet protocol people have gotten together in like an emergency meeting and said, we have to actually encrypt everything on the internet. So they might change all the protocols. So this is a private enterprise saying, reacting to another state incursion and coming to the rescue. It's amazing how the free market and private enterprise always has a solution.
Yeah.
But
I think so, and with this I'm fairly optimistic. I work in the field of what's called big data, and yeah, they can do this stuff. This stuff will work in English, it will work on emails, it won't work on Twitter, it won't work on small stuff where they have to analyze the words. But the amount of data that they have to store, it soon becomes mathematically close to impossible to find anything quickly. What they will do is they'll go back in their records if they want to get someone for a crime and someone's already there.
Right.
That is possible, but it would take weeks of searching.
Right. And that's the problem too, is that everything's a crime now in the Western world. Anything. There's a book that was written, I think, 10 or 20 years ago called You Break 3 Laws Every Day. I think if that book was updated, it'd be 30 or 300. Everything's illegal. I gave some raw milk to my friend. That's illegal.
Yeah.
I smoked just, in the US, outside of a restaurant within 30 feet. I just broke another law. So they can find anything on you, and if they want to. And that's really how I think the US is progressing here, is a lot of people don't see still that it's becoming so oppressive. They go, oh, we still have laws and stuff. But they've grown to the point where they've learned how to use all these systems, so it doesn't seem necessarily like complete oppression, but it is. The U.S. has 5% of the world population and 25% of the prison population. These prisons are mostly rape camps, and people laugh about it. They go, oh, he's going to go to jail and get raped, like it's funny. And what did he do? Oh, he had some marijuana in his pockets.
And selling lemonade.
Yeah, selling lemon. Yeah, all these kinds of things. It's just insane. All these things, they just get out of control. And I think people are starting to catch on. I think the U.S. especially is the police state's starting to bare its teeth more. And it's really making a lot of Americans say, maybe these guys aren't, what do they used to call them? Peace officers.
Peace officers.
They didn't notice when they changed it to law enforcement a few decades ago, and then all of a sudden now they're in SWAT gear for everything. So it's starting to really become obvious to people. So please pass around this video, let people know that there are a lot of other options. You don't have to go down into this totally oppressive police state. We don't have to have wars. All these things are quite easily solved as soon as you start to understand some of the philosophies we've been talking about. And just to let you know as well, Alexander Jousse writes for our website at dollarvigilante.com. He writes about the Italian perspective on things because that's where he lives. And he also sort of came to us through something called TBV Groups, which is run by James Guzman, who was also previously on Anarchast. And so that's a way, and you can get that through dollarvigilante.com right now, and soon through its own website. And that's a way to connect with free-minded people around the world, especially a lot of people who have sort of expatriated as well. And so they've gone to a country like Mexico or wherever, they've started up businesses, so you can talk to them, find out what's going on, come visit. And almost everyone's very open-minded and friendly about meeting other like-minded people. They don't, if you were just to email them and say, hey, I heard you expatriated to Chile, you're doing well down there, I love Barack Obama, I love the government, can I talk to you? A lot of people like us would be like, oh, no, sorry, I just don't.
I'm busy.
Yeah, I don't like talking to criminals. So that's another great thing. And
Yeah, through that I've actually met quite a few people through TDD groups. I've met some South Africans, which is surprising because there aren't many libertarians at all in South Africa. It tends to be either pro-state or communist or fascist. And then I've also met a couple of Italians, more through TDV, who are now living in Chile.
Yeah, I just met them recently as well. We just had a few of them on, and it was funny. Like, this world is so small in these terms. I was sitting there in Santiago, Chile, and we interviewed them. They're both from Exosphere, Antonio and Skinner Lane.
Yeah.
And Antonio brought you up for some reason. He said he actually is starting up our Dollar Vigilante Italy. And I said, oh, I know this. I brought you up. I said, I know this guy who lives in Italy and he writes for us. And he knew you. You guys had already talked. So we kind of got this little network of anarchists. And hopefully it becomes big enough at some point that, you know, it's not like we all know each other.
Yeah. And where you can do more business with each other. And,
yeah, it's really... you know, it could be really cool how this all develops, and I'm seeing it develop all over the place. So many people have done this. Like we had on Luke, who we interviewed here on the beach in Acapulco a few months ago from New York, and he came down. He went to all the TDV groups, and he had a great time. And now he's actually looking, I think, at moving down somewhere because I just saw on Facebook he's trying to learn Spanish now or something. So. So yeah, all these things can develop. So check out dollarvigilante.com. The basic subscription is $15 a month, so it's not that expensive. It's like a magazine subscription. You get access to all these groups, and you get access to a lot of other good information as well that we provide. And of course, check us out here on Anarchast, and please pass around these videos. Please share them. We need people to understand these things more because we're heading into a difficult time as these nation states start to collapse. And the more people understand what we're talking about, the more better and prosperous, the more peaceful it'll be.
Yeah.
So that's it from Acapulco. I'd like to thank Alexander Jousse, and that's it for Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. Peace, love, and anarchy.